So what are we doing?
So it is 2028, and we're looking back at a 30-year anniversary of being John Malkovich for a special. They're coming out with a new format, so we're redigitizing. A new format's this chip that gets put into the back of your head, and you just watch the movie in 1/2 of a second. And so we have to re-release it. And so we're doing a special feature for that release. We're going to look at all these photos from 30 years ago when we made the film. This is Vince Landay. He is my longtime producer. Vince was the post-super on this movie. Red Rock West was the name of it. We had an actual movie producer we were working with. You know, on Malkovich, I just knew, on everything, but on going into the first movie, I knew that he always, if there's something that I needed, if there's a set that I wanted to be a certain way, if there was a piece of equipment we needed, or whatever it was from production, it was going to be, if he knew I needed it, it was going to be there, or he was going to come to me well in advance and say, we can't get that, but here's other suggestions or other solutions. What if we did this or this or this? I never show up and am surprised. Vince always either makes it happen or lets me know well in advance, and he'll do anything to make it happen and make sure that I have what I need when we show up on set. I think no matter how old we are, me and Charlie always think about Malkovich as the guy who made this all possible. Not just this movie, but just everything that's come after that. Because he didn't have to do this movie, and not only did he not have to do it, it was almost kind of insane for him to do this movie. But the fact that he did, it made everything else for us possible. I always thank him every time I see him. I think the main reason he did it is because the script is great, and Charlie wrote an amazing script, and I think that was undeniable. And at the end of the day, even though it's named after him and he's playing himself, I think in the end they said, fuck it, it's an amazing script, and how could I not be a part of this?
The scripting as good as it was, if he had said no, were there other ways you would have still tried to make the movie? No,
we didn't know how to. We never came up with anyone that we were excited about. We just, the producer would ask us that, and Charlie and I would sit and try and come up with somebody, and we never could, until we'd always go back to, we got to get John. Not enough can be said about Charlie. He definitely, I read the script, and just the title alone, I was like, what is this? And I picked it up, and I was thought I'd just read 5 pages, and I read the whole thing, and instantly was in awe of it and loved it, and somehow felt familiar in some way, or related to it in its sensibility and sense of humor. And Charlie, he'd written it really just for fun. He never thought it was going to get made. He wrote it as something he hoped would get him jobs in the film business. And getting to work with him and getting to see why he did what he did and why he wrote the way he did, and it wasn't just imaginative, funny ideas. They were actually all coming from somewhere inside of him, and things he was feeling, and that was all really inspiring and educational. And we worked on the script for a year before it got made, and I think in that year we really sort of bonded and got to know each other, and sort of got in sync on the movie we were making. This is us figuring out how to do the Malkovich mirror thing, to be able to reveal himself in the mirror. We photo storyboarded. We took photos of the entire sequence before we shot it. Basically, shooting it so we have it blocked out, but so when we show up on the set, we don't have to figure it all out, and we can, since there's so many effects, we have the effects figured out already before we're there. And that's Lance Accord, our cinematographer. Lance is a cinematographer. He can work with giant crews with loads of light, and he can work with no crews and no light, and just just take a bare light bulb and somehow make it look beautiful and appropriate. And he's also not afraid. I think some DPs are afraid to let it be dark, and Lance is not afraid of that. We had all, everybody, Lance and KK and everybody, Casey Storm, a bunch of us had all learned together as we made videos together. And so when we went to do our first film, the idea is we would just all continue on together. And it was most of our first film The idea was we wanted to just work the way we wanted to work. And the first day of shooting, I remember showing up, the first thing we shot was in Craig and Lottie's apartment. And I had so much anxiety of it being like, it was the first day of the first movie, and it was going to be like this whole different experience. And, that I wasn't, I had to really prepare and get ready for it. And sometime in the morning, I realized it didn't feel that different. It was like everybody was the same. Like everybody I knew was the same, and the process was the same. We were just like setting up shots and shooting them, and working with people on the in front of the camera, and everybody behind the camera was the same. Gino Nix, our key grip, and Lance Accord, the cameraman, and Casey. Everybody, we all knew each other, and it was just like, oh, we're just on set again. And it wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be, because it was just like, all right, we're just back together again. Cameron and Keener, these guys, they kind of made the movie fun. They were friends beforehand. Actually, I'd cast Catherine Keener as Maxine already, and we were really struggling with finding someone to play Lottie. And Keener was the one who suggested Cameron, and I was like, I didn't see it. But just like looking at photos of her, she just did not look like Lottie. She's like, no, trust me, meet her. And I had lunch with her. I was so distracted by just how beautiful and, just like energetic and sort of striking she was. And so I told Keener, I don't know. And Keener just said, no, there's something, there's more to her. And I'd never seen her in any of the performances she'd done do anything like what we were looking for. Keener called me back and said, oh, Cameron offered to read if you want to read. And so I was like, okay, cool, yeah, let's do that. And she came in, and she was sort of being cute, and she was like being Cameron. And at a certain point, I just started asking her to do things that weren't as cute, and sort of stripping down the sexuality and femininity. By pulling those things away, I realized that Cameron had a sincerity to her, and and obviously she was really funny. She's a really funny actor. Like, she's great at comedy. But what I realized is that she had a sincerity and a generosity about her that was very much like Lottie. By reading with her, I realized, okay, if we strip away the surface things that are not right about her for the character, at the heart, she's really right for the character. And so we cast her, and we sort of transformed her into being this sort of, Brooklyn, bohemian animal person, and she was amazing. Both of those roles were really hard to cast. I don't know why, but finding someone to play Maxine that had the power of Maxine, but could do it with a smile and make it effortless, and not do it like this sort of quick talking, cigarette smoking, hard sort of performance. That was that sort of, it was hard to get somebody to not do that, to make it strong without going to that place. She held all the power in the whole movie. The whole movie kind of revolves around her character, and it also, for somebody to have the power, the other actors have to give her the power. And so it was also finding the balance of how you have how people are reacting to her. And Keener is just, her radar is so sharp. She picks up on everything that's going on, what everyone's feeling, what everyone wants, what everyone's agenda is, what everyone, but I think the difference is Maxine uses that selfishly where Keener doesn't. But, I think that's what helped her sort of be Maxine so good. Keener and Cameron really did bring a great spirit of fun to the set. We do rehearsals where we just rehearse as the character. And one of the things I wanted to do with Lottie was get her just used to taking care of Craig. She give her errands. Her whole thing is take care of Craig, take care of the animals, take care of everybody. And so at one point in my house, we were doing rehearsals, and we're like, let's go shopping for Craig. Craig needs stuff at Radio Shack for his equipment, his stereo equipment that he uses for his puppets. So we went down to Radio Shack, and she just had to be shopping for her husband. And then I remember also she borrowed the wigs and would go to animal shows, during rehearsals. She'd go to animal shows and just take care of animals and talk about animals with other animal people. She actually, she took rehearsals super seriously and went and hung out with the chimps a lot. So by the time we were on set, they felt really comfortable with her, and they wouldn't have to go back to the trainer if they were scared. She could take care of them. Let's see what else. Oh, this is Trooper, Keener's dog. Keener came to work every day with Trooper, who's since passed away. But He was a sweetie. And one of my brother's responsibilities was walking trooper twice a day. And Sam was 18. It was his first real job out of high school. He was a PA for us during the summer we made the movie. And he had to wake me up in the morning and get me out of bed and get me to work. And he also had to, like, at the end of the night, drive the film to Burbank to drop it off at Photochem. And then during the day, he had to, like, walk trooper, and he had to sweep parking lots and lock up the set. All right, Sam, here's your job today. Stand on the sidewalk for 14 hours and make sure when we say it's locked up, don't let anyone pass by. Oh, okay. And then we'd come out and he'd be asleep on the sidewalk. Casey Storm was somebody that I knew who just had great taste, and I liked his sensibility and thought he had a great sense of style. And so since then, I always just worked with Casey as our costume designer, and he sort of, just like me and like all of us, just sort of learned as we went, and we learned what we were doing, as we were going along. And so by the time we did our first movie, he had been being a costume designer for a couple of years, and but he just brought, he has a great sense of humor, and he just very specific. All the clothes are just super specific, like an artist that didn't really think too much about his clothes. Casey is basically a genius when it comes to like creating this kind of character. KK Barrett, he's somebody we haven't talked too much about. Production designer, punk rocker. He designed the sets, and he just is a questioner. He'll just like never settle. He just always keeps pushing and questioning and trying to figure out what something should be and what it should look like. And this is just in our office. Oh, this is with his early design, his walls and stuff that he's designing. What things are going to look like. Thomas, look at this handsome man. So he's our first AD. He makes it all happen. On set, it's really Thomas, me, and Lance. And it's like me and Lance blocking it and shooting it, and Thomas making sure we're getting everything done and offering suggestions and creative solutions, and also just being our eyes and ears and helping me keep an eye on everything. And like, he's very sensitive to actors. If somebody's uncomfortable, he'll whisper in my ear the actor might need some help or whatever it is. He's sort of always just aware of everybody's needs and making sure we're making our day and everybody's getting what they need. On this movie, we really wanted it to have a murkiness to it. We wanted the blacks to be really milky, and we wanted it to just not feel glossy in any way. We wanted to have this sort of dingy naturalism to it, and to sort of play against the science fiction of it, and also it felt right for these sort of the Craig and Lottie Schwartz and where they lived and who they were. He's an artist. She's works with animals, and so it just felt like right for that apartment. But when the financiers saw the movie, not even saw the movie, when they started seeing dailies the first week of photography, they were looking at how dark the basement was, how it didn't look funny to them, and they didn't recognize Cameron Diaz, and we started getting a lot of pressure from the studios, from the financier. They're like, we have to fire the cinematographer and bring in a new cinematographer. I'm like, what are you talking about? We're not going to do that. We're not firing Lance. So they're like, okay, well, you have to bring in more fill light. You have to fill it. And it was like 3 or 4 nights in a row we'd have to go to dailies and watch them with people from the studio, and they would say, try and get us to put more fill light into the film because it didn't look like a comedy. And then 2 things happened. One, we ended up just sort of getting through that part of the movie, which was all the stuff in the apartment, Craig and Lottie's apartment, and we moved on to the 7th floor, and that just naturally had more fill light because the lights were like an inch above their head, and there were all these fluorescent banks, and also it looked funnier because the 7th floor looked funny. So that sort of bought us some time. And then that was the second week, and by the 3rd week, the whole company that was financing the movie called Polygram had got bought by Universal Pictures, and like suddenly, nobody cared about this little mini micro budget movie. And the amazing thing is, not only did no one bother us for the rest of photography, nobody bothered us for another year. We shot and edited the movie, and like took way longer than we were supposed to. We edited for 9 months. till we were felt like the movie was good, and then and by that time the dust had settled, and we started showing it to the people at the the studio, and it was distributing it, and and they were into it, and it was good.